Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like precision.
Right, yeah.
It's almost like engineering. I mean, if you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line right on the screen, and the doctor points to it with a pen and says, well, there it is. That is the problem.
Yeah, it's binary. I mean, you're either broken or you're not broken. The pathology is just clean and undeniable.
Exactly.
Right.
But then you step into the world of modern professional life.
Oh, boy, yeah.
And specifically, you start dealing with that creeping, heavy, just pervasive feeling of workplace burnout. And suddenly, that x-ray machine is completely useless. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky.
It really is.
Like, how do you pinpoint the exact moment you lose your spark? How do you actually measure the precise weight of mental exhaustion when there's just no clear, visible injury?
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Right.
There's no simple blood test for being overwhelmed. You can't put a stethoscope to someone's career and hear that it's failing.
Yeah. And what I find so interesting and honestly really frustrating is that we often lack the precise vocabulary to explain why we're so tired.
We really do.
We try to explain it to our bosses or our partners or even just to ourselves, and we default to these incredibly hollow phrases.
Right, like, oh, I'm stressed.
Exactly. We say, I'm stressed, or I've had a long week. But stress doesn't even begin to cover the physiological and psychological reality of what's actually happening.
No, it completely fails to capture the depth of it.
So today, we are going to look really closely at the language of exhaustion. We're getting into this fascinating deep dive based on a C1 advanced English listening practice show called the Learning English Podcast.
Yeah, and the specific source material we're looking at is an episode hosted by two instructors, John and Emma, and it's titled Navigating Workplace Burnout, Advanced English Idioms for Professional Balance.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because what John and Emma provide in this source, it isn't just a basic vocabulary lesson for non-native speakers.
Right, it's much more than that.
If you look closely at the specific phrases they chose, it's actually a complete roadmap of the human breaking point.
It really is. And the mission of our deep dive today is to perform a kind of linguistic autopsy on burnout.
Ooh, I like that. Linguistic autopsy.
Yeah, we're going to analyze 7 highly visual, advanced English idioms that John and Emma highlight. And through that lens, we can actually trace the entire life cycle of professional exhaustion.
Wow.
We'll track it from the initial deceptive trap of overcommitment straight through to the physiological crash, and finally look at the very specific mechanics required for recovery.
So as we go through this, if you're listening, I really want you to pay attention to the imagery hidden inside these common phrases.
Yeah, that's key.
Because the words we instinctively use reveal the actual mechanics of our burnout. Let's start at the root cause.
Okay, let's do it.
Before the dark circles appear under your eyes, and long before the physical exhaustion even sets in, there's a psychological trap that you have to fall into first.
And the root cause usually isn't a lack of ability or intelligence.
Right.
It's an excess of ambition. It's almost always driven by the desire to appear hyper-competent to the people around us.
Yes, exactly.
John, one of the hosts of the source material, shares a very personal anecdote that just perfectly illustrates this trap.
Yeah, he was managing this massive high-stakes project at work, and on top of that, he decided it was, a great time to take evening classes.
Oh, man.
He fully admitted that he kept saying yes to every single request that came his way, specifically because he wanted to look capable.
Which is so relatable.
And the idiom they use to describe this initial stage of burnout is to bite off more than you can chew.
It's a very common phrase, yeah. The source defines it simply as taking on more responsibilities or tasks than you can actually manage.
But wait, I want to challenge this premise entirely.
Okay.
Isn't biting off more than you can chew just a synonym for healthy ambition? Because we're constantly told by career coaches and management books to step outside our comfort zones, right? To stretch ourselves, to take on the project we aren't quite ready for.
Sure, yeah.
So how do we know when we cross the line from being ambitious and driven to actively setting ourselves up for failure?
Well, that is the defining tension of modern work, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But the answer to your question is actually hidden in the physical reality of the metaphor itself.
Okay, explain that.
Think about the mechanics of eating. You can fit a massive amount of food into your mouth.
Right.
The size of the bite is your ambition. It's what you want to achieve.
Okay.
But your mouth doesn't process the food. Your throat and your stomach do.
Ah, I see.
So if your capacity to swallow and digest doesn't match the size of the bite you just took, Ambition doesn't make you grow. It makes you choke.
Wow. So the biting is the desire, but the chewing and swallowing represent your actual operational bandwidth.
Exactly. It's a fundamental mismatch between desire and reality.
Yeah.
You are suffocating under the weight of your own commitments.
That is a terrifying visual.
And when you're choking like that, your entire approach to work fundamentally changes form.
How so?
You stop trying to do things deeply and you start trying to do them broadly just to survive the day.
Right, which leads us to the second idiom Emma introduces for this stage, to spread yourself too thin.
Yes, and Emma's analogy for this in the source material is incredibly vivid.
It really stuck with me.
She compares this state of working to taking a tiny single pat of butter and trying to spread it over a massive giant loaf of bread.
Such a great image.
Right. The butter represents you, your cognitive energy, your focus, your time.
And the bread is your ever-growing list of obligations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And think about what happens to the quality of that butter when you try to cover that much surface area.
The flavor just completely disappears.
It loses its essence entirely. The source uses the example of someone trying to juggle a demanding full-time job, playing in a band, and doing heavy volunteer work all at the exact same time. You might physically be in all those places, but the friction of context switching means you're cognitively absent everywhere.
You're doing a dozen things simultaneously, which virtually guarantees you can't do a single one of them well.
Exactly.
So if you're listening to this on your commute or at your desk right now, just pause and do an honest audit of your week.
Good idea.
Are you chewing on too much right now just to maintain the illusion of being capable?
Are you scraping a tiny sliver of your energy across a giant loaf of obligations?
Because if you are trapped in that ambition phase, human nature dictates what happens next.
Yep.
You don't usually step back and ask for help. You try to outwork the bad math.
Right, which forces you to accelerate toward an empty tank.
Exactly.
We move from the psychological trap to the physical toll.
Once you realize you're spread too thin, the instinct is to solve the problem by throwing more hours and forced energy at it.
Always.
If the workload is impossible, you just decide to sleep less.
Yeah.
And the language in the source material shifts drastically here.
It really does.
We abandon the food metaphors entirely, and we move into the language of combustion and depletion, starting with the idiom to burn the candle at both ends.
I mean, everyone is familiar with this phrase, right? Meaning working from early morning until late at night with no rest.
Right.
But John's schedule during his burnout phase is just a harrowing look at what that actually does to a human being.
It's brutal.
He was waking up at 5 a.m. every day to study for his evening classes, working a full, high-pressure day, managing his project, and then staying up until midnight doing assignments.
I mean, just do the math on that for a second. 5 in the morning until midnight. That leaves, what, 5 hours total?
Yeah, 5 hours.
And if you factor in the time it takes to biologically wind down, fall asleep, maybe take a shower, he is getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of actual restorative sleep.
It's nothing.
The phrase burning the candle at both ends is so apt because it highlights a mathematical impossibility.
Yes.
Yes, the candle gives off twice as much light for a brief moment, but it's actively destroying itself in the process. You are biologically compromised.
You cannot sustain that level of sleep deprivation without your executive function just falling off a cliff.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to Emma's experience during her company's busy season.
Right.
She describes working through every weekend, skipping lunch breaks entirely, and functioning, and these are her exact words from the source, purely on caffeine and adrenaline.
Wow.
And she introduces the idiom to run on fumes.
I'd sort of look at this phase like taking out a high-interest payday loan, but with your central nervous system.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right. Imagine you're completely out of cash. That cash is your baseline energy. You have $0 in your biological checking account.
Okay, I follow.
But you still have a massive presentation on Thursday and a full inbox to get through. So what do?
What do?
You put the rest of your week on a credit card. Those are the fumes. You are borrowing energy from the future to pay for today's tasks.
Wow, the credit card analogy is incredibly accurate regarding the physiological mechanics at play here. When a car runs on fumes, it's using the last vapor in the tank. When a human runs on fumes, what are those fumes actually made of?
Just bad stuff.
It's a cocktail of stress hormones. It's cortisol and adrenaline. And the adrenaline tricks your brain into thinking you have momentum.
Oh, that's so true.
When you put a purchase on a credit card, you feel like you still have purchasing power. When you operate on adrenaline, you feel a false sense of productivity. You might even feel energized.
But it's an illusion.
A total illusion. You feel facts, but you're actually just erratic.
Yeah.
Your body is desperately pulling the fire alarm, but you're treating it like a helpful burst of energy to finish your spreadsheet.
Oh, man.
You are completely empty, and as you pointed out with the debt analogy, the bill always comes due. You cannot borrow from tomorrow indefinitely.
Which rockets us right into the third phase of the burnout life cycle, the crash.
Yeah, the forced acceleration of burning the candle at both ends, combined with the illusion of running on fumes, it leads to one inevitable outcome.
A sudden violent stop.
Exactly. And the idiom they use for this in the C1 Advanced lesson is to hit a wall.
To hit a wall.
The origins of this phrase are heavily rooted in endurance sports, specifically marathon running.
Okay, right.
It describes reaching a point of sudden, total physical and mental exhaustion where you just cannot take another step. It is the absolute depletion of glycogen stores in the muscles and the liver.
And Emma's story about hitting her wall is something I think almost every modern professional has experienced.
Oh, absolutely.
She said it was a Tuesday morning. Nothing uniquely catastrophic had happened. It was just a normal Tuesday. She sat down at her computer, looked at her email inbox, and her brain completely shut down.
It's just shut down.
She physically could not formulate or type a single sentence. She was totally burnt out.
Staring at a blinking cursor, possessing the technical skill to type, but completely lacking the neurological bridge to make the fingers move.
It's wild, but let's look at the phrasing here. Why do we say we hit a wall? Why don't we say we tripped over a hurdle or ran out of road? What is the specific architecture of that metaphor doing for us?
Well, a hurdle is an obstacle designed to be jumped over.
Okay.
A road is something you can eventually pave or extend. But a wall represents an immovable, absolute, concrete barrier. You cannot negotiate with a wall.
It's the end of the line.
It really emphasizes a fundamental shift in control. When you hit a wall, this isn't a choice anymore.
Right.
You don't get to manage your time better or push through it with another cup of coffee. Your body and your brain make the executive decision to stop for you.
Wow.
It is a sudden and total loss of agency. You are driving the car on fumes, ignoring all the warning lights on the dashboard, and the wall is what finally stops the vehicle.
It's terrifying when you realize you are no longer the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah, it really is.
Your biology essentially hijacks the brakes because you refuse to use them. If you're listening, think about whether you've ever had a Tuesday morning inbox moment.
A moment where the prefrontal cortex just goes on strike to protect you from yourself.
Yeah, because that isn't a lack of willpower. That is the wall taking your agency away to prevent you from doing further damage.
Exactly. And once you are broken at the bottom of that wall, you can't just climb over it. The damage has been done.
Right.
Which brings us to the final phase of the source material's life cycle. The recovery mechanics.
The idioms in the source material undergo a massive shift here.
They do.
We move completely away from describing the trauma, the choking, the burning, the crashing.
Yeah.
And we shift entirely toward the active steps required for restoration.
The very first step of recovery is stopping the ongoing damage. And the idiom Emma introduces is to pull the plug.
We all know the literal meaning of this, right?
Yep.
Severing a machine's connection to its power source. But in a workplace context, John and Emma explained that pulling the plug means intentionally stopping an activity.
Right.
It's the definitive act of closing the laptop, saying no, and declaring the workday officially over. But let's be honest, in the modern knowledge economy, actually pulling the plug is incredibly difficult.
The source rightly points out the unique modern challenge we face. The smartphone in our pockets.
Ugh, yes.
The office isn't a physical building you leave at 5 p.m. anymore. It's a device sitting right on your coffee table.
It is so wildly tempting to just quickly check your email at 9 p.m. while you're watching TV.
Oh, I do it all the time.
You tell yourself, oh, I'm not really working, I'm just glancing.
Just checking.
But that glance is enough to keep the machine plugged in. You see an email from a frustrated client, and suddenly your brain is humming with the electrical current of work stress. Your living room becomes a conference room.
And if you don't fully sever that connection, if you don't aggressively pull the plug, you cannot access the final idiom on our list.
Which is
to recharge your batteries.
Which means to deliberately rest and relax in order to regain your physical and mental energy.
Right.
You need to plug yourself into activities that actually give you life rather than extract it.
John and Emma highlight how deeply personal this process is by contrasting their own methods. They are completely different.
Okay, how so?
John requires extreme disconnection. His method is turning off his phone entirely and going for a long physical hike in the woods to reset his nervous system.
Okay. Whereas Emma needs quiet comfort.
Right.
Her way of recharging is retreating indoors, reading a fiction book, and taking a long nap.
Sounds nice.
It goes to show that if you're trying to recover from burnout, you can't just copy someone else's routine. You have to find the specific current that refills your own tank.
But look at the underlying pattern in those two recovery idioms.
I was just thinking about that. It is incredibly ironic.
Isn't it?
The idioms we use for human rest and recovery, pulling plugs and recharging batteries, they're metaphors based entirely on machines.
Exactly.
We don't use organic language. We don't say nurture the soil or wait for the winter to pass. We use the rigid language of electronics. We had to act like machines powering down, just so we can feel human again.
That connects directly back to the concept of agency we discussed with the wall.
Oh, right.
A machine metaphor highlights the necessity of active intervention. Setting a boundary is an active verb. You have to pull the plug. It requires force.
That's a great point.
Furthermore, a battery sitting on a table does not recharge itself. It slowly dies.
Yeah.
Someone has to actively plug it into a power source. You have to be the deliberate operator of your own life, taking intentional action to power down the system before the system burns out entirely.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's trace the full linguistic journey we've just taken through the Learning English podcast source material.
Right.
It is wild how clearly these phrases map out the disaster.
It really is a perfect sequence.
Right.
We start with the psychological trap of too much ambition. We want to look capable, so we bite off more than we can chew. And we spread our energy so thin that we lose all depth and effectiveness.
Then we realize we're failing. So we try to compensate for our lack of capacity by working impossible, destructive hours.
Mm-hmm.
We burn the candle at both ends, destroying our sleep, and we run on fumes, putting our biological energy on a high-interest credit card we can never pay off.
Until the debt catches up to us and we inevitably suffer the sudden crash, we hit a wall.
We completely lose our agency, and our own neurobiology stages a mutiny and makes the decision to stop for us.
And finally, to survive the aftermath, we must enforce hard, almost aggressive boundaries.
Right.
We have to violently pull the plug on our workdays and deliberately seek out the specific activities that recharge our batteries.
Emma summarizes this beautifully at the end of the source material. She reminds the listener that a career is a marathon, not a sprint.
It's so true.
The real value of analyzing these advanced English phrases isn't just to sound more natural in a boardroom or an email. The value is using them as a diagnostic tool.
Yes. Going all the way back to our X-ray analogy from the beginning of the show.
Exactly.
Since there is no blood test for burnout, this language becomes your diagnostic scan.
You can use these exact phrases to check the warning lights on your own dashboard. Ask yourself honestly, am I running on fumes right now?
Have I bitten off more than I can chew?
Right. By giving the exhaustion a highly specific name, you reclaim the power to address it before your body forces you into the wall.
I love that perspective, using the language to take the steering wheel back.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, okay.
Something that builds on the machine metaphors we just uncovered in the source material.
Let's hear it.
Think about the words we've spent the last few minutes unpacking. Running on fumes, pulling the plug, recharging batteries. Almost all of the idioms we use for the modern professional experience compare the fragile biological human body to a machine or a vehicle. So my question is, does our modern professional language inherently normalize our own burnout?
Wow, that entirely changes the frame of the conversation.
Do we treat ourselves like cars and electronics because our workplace culture silently demands that we operate exactly like them?
I mean, we expect constant output, infinite efficiency.
And we expect to always be switched on.
Yeah.
Think about your phone. When your smartphone battery drops to 15%, you panic.
Oh, total panic.
You immediately search the room for a charger. You close down heavy apps to save power. You prioritize the battery survival above everything else.
You intervene immediately.
Immediately. But when your biological battery drops to 15%, what do?
You drink another double espresso.
Exactly. You drink another double espresso, you stare at the screen harder, and you force yourself to keep working.
It's so backwards.
So as you navigate your obligations this week, I invite you to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. Do you treat your smartphone battery better than your own?
That is a powerful thought to carry with you.
Take care of your biological batteries, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive. You know, usually when we talk about a regular Tuesday at the office, there's this expectation of, well, boredom.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some mild annoyance.
Right. You imagine these beige cubicles, the hum of a printer somewhere down the hall, maybe a slightly stale cup of coffee. I mean, it's supposed to be mundane, you know? It's supposed to be safe.
It is. But then you look at the actual language we use to describe our jobs, and suddenly, we aren't in a beige cubicle anymore.
No, not at all.
We are drowning. We are trapped animals. We are running until our lungs burn and our necks literally snap back. We use this incredibly visceral, intense, almost survivalist language to describe, answering emails.
It really is wild when you step back and think about it.
It's a striking disconnect. I mean, we sit in these climate-controlled environments in ergonomic chairs, but the vocabulary we instinctively reach for implies extreme, imminent physical danger.
We use survivalist language because, honestly, modern work culture has evolved into a psychological trap.
Right.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we're decoding the language of burnout.
Yeah, we are exploring the specific vocabulary and those really powerful idioms that reveal the true psychological weight of how we work today.
And we're doing this because mastering these phrases from today's advanced English linguistic lesson, it isn't just about expanding your vocabulary.
No, definitely not.
It's about gaining the exact analytical tools to accurately diagnose, articulate, and ultimately survive the complex emotional landscape of your professional life.
Because you cannot fight an environment you cannot accurately describe.
Exactly.
If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed at work or school, or if you've ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels, exhausted, but somehow not getting anywhere, the words we use hold the key to understanding why that is happening.
Yeah, so our mission for you today is simple. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have the exact phrasing to define that struggle and the conceptual framework to establish real, impenetrable boundaries.
Right, and to do that, we have to start with the root cause. We have to name the environment that necessitates all these survival metaphors in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think about the phrase hustle culture.
Oh, yeah.
It's everywhere now, right? But when you actually define it, exactly as our source material does, the concept is quite dark.
It really is. It is the pervasive societal belief that one must work nonstop, be constantly productive, and willingly sacrifice personal life in order to be deemed successful.
The sacrifice is the key part.
Yeah, I mean, the defining mechanism of hustle culture is the glorification of overwork. It is not simply that society requires labor.
Right, labor is normal.
Exactly. But it's that society has elevated extreme labor to a moral virtue. When something is glorified like that, it moves from being a practical necessity to a sacred duty.
And you see this performative sacred duty constantly broadcasted.
Yeah.
I mean, social media is just the prime vector for it.
Oh, absolutely.
You open an app and immediately see someone bragging about their 4 a.m. wake-up call.
Yes, the classic 4 a.m. post.
Right. They take a picture of their laptop in the dark with a caption about grinding while everyone else is sleeping. Or you see people casually dropping the fact they're working an 80-hour week as, like, a badge of honor.
Well, the 4 a.m. social media post is fascinating because it perfectly illustrates the performative nature of this culture.
Performative is the perfect word.
Because the goal of that post isn't to share the actual work being done, The goal is to broadcast the sacrifice.
Right. No one is posting the actual spreadsheet. They're posting the clock.
Exactly. The darkness outside the window in those photos is entirely intentional. It signals visually that the person is violating their own biological need for sleep in service of productivity.
Yes. It's this bizarre, performative, competitive sport where the prize is just more exhaustion.
Right.
I always ask, is a person actually producing better work at 4 in the morning, or is it just about looking like they're doing a lot?
Usually the latter.
It feels completely unmoored from actual output. It's about the aesthetic of suffering for your job.
And that aesthetic creates a pervasive environmental pressure. I mean, when overwork is framed as the ultimate virtue, the natural consequence is that rest is framed as a moral failure.
That is such an important point.
This is why people experience profound visceral guilt when they simply try to take a single day off.
I want to dig into that guilt because it's a very specific feeling.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's say you take a Tuesday off. You aren't sick. You just needed a day.
Right, a mental health day or just a break.
Exactly. You sit on your couch, and instead of relaxing, there is this hum of anxiety in the back of your brain.
Yeah.
You feel like you're getting away with a crime.
You feel that way because, under the logic of hustle culture, taking a Tuesday off means you are falling behind in the competition.
You're losing ground.
Exactly. You are failing the moral test of constant productivity. The guilt is literally the culture policing your behavior. If work is glorified, then stillness is a sin.
So we have this environment, this hustle culture that demands constant motion and punishes stillness with guilt.
Yeah.
What does it physically and emotionally feel like to live inside that pressure cooker every single day?
Well, that's where the language we use gives us an incredibly vivid picture.
Right. Think about the idiom of being up to your eyeballs.
What's fascinating here is how it perfectly captures the sensory experience of extreme overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's defined as being deeply involved in or completely consumed by a situation, specifically things like work or insurmountable debt.
And then the physical imagery here is honestly terrifying if you really sit with it.
It is.
Imagine standing in a pool of water, but the water isn't splashing around your ankles where you can easily wade through it.
No, it's much higher.
Right? It isn't at your waist where you can still swim. The water is so deep it literally reaches your eyes.
And the water level is the critical element of the metaphor here. If the water is at your eyeballs, your margin for error is effectively zero.
Zero.
A fraction of an inch of movement in the wrong direction and you are submerged.
Right. You can't look left. You can't look right.
Right.
You certainly cannot look down to see what you are standing on.
No, you drown.
Exactly. Your entire physical existence is reduced to tilting your head slightly back and gasping for air. The sheer sensory panic of this idiom is what strikes me.
Yeah.
You aren't just busy. You are 1 inch away from going under. It's a pure survival metaphor.
And if we connect this to the broader context of the modern office, what is the water?
That's the question.
It's the spreadsheets. It's the endless influx of emails. It's the paperwork that never stops generating.
This is a rising tide of tasks.
Exactly. When you are up to your eyeballs in these tasks, it wholly prevents you from engaging in the rest of human existence. You can't go out for the evening. You can't be present with your family.
Because if you look away to go out for the evening, you drown.
Precisely. And this connects deeply to the biological reality of severe stress.
How so?
Well, when we talk about physical burnout, like hitting a wall or running on fumes, we are talking about energy depletion.
Right.
But being up to your eyeballs describes a state of hyperarousal and high alert survival. You are barely maintaining the status quo.
You are just reacting. There is no strategy.
Exactly. You cannot strategize when the water is at eye level. Higher order thinking, planning for the future, creativity, these all require a safe vantage point.
They need a foundation.
Right. They require a baseline level of security. When your entire cognitive capacity is dedicated to just treading water, just trying to keep your nose above the next wave of emails, you lose the ability to see the shoreline.
You are locked in an endless present moment of panic.
Yeah.
And the terrifying thing is, you can only tread water for so long. Muscles give out.
They always do.
The body and the mind simply cannot sustain that level of high alert survival indefinitely. So eventually, a different physical mechanic takes over.
Right.
You go from the sensation of drowning to the violent reality of snapping.
And this is where we talk about reaching the end of your tether.
Yes, having absolutely no patience, energy, or strength left to deal with a difficult situation.
Right.
And I have to say, the imagery embedded in this phrase is incredibly violent.
It really is.
Imagine a dog tied to a rope, a tether. The dog starts running. Maybe it's trying to get away. Maybe it's chasing something.
Yeah.
It runs as fast and as fiercely as it can. And then suddenly it runs out of rope. It hits the absolute limit of the tether and is violently, physically pulled back by the neck.
And the physical jarring of that image is the entire point of the phrase. It is designed to illustrate a hard, unforgiving stop.
When I really visualize that, the dog running full speed and then just wham, choked by the rope, it's genuinely shocking.
Yeah, it's not a gentle phrase.
Not at all. It's not about feeling a little sleepy or needing a quick nap.
No. To ground this in a very human reality, consider the example from the source of a mother who has been dealing with a crying baby for 3 unbroken hours.
Oh, wow.
She doesn't just slowly fade into being tired. She reaches a specific, critical threshold. She hits the end of her tether.
It's a complete Bankrupt depletion.
It is the absolute limit of human endurance.
Yeah.
It is a state where psychological and emotional resources simply cease to function.
Right.
The endurance doesn't just ramp down slowly. It hits a wall and shatters. The snap of the tether is that moment of sudden, undeniable failure, where you physically and mentally cannot process one more spreadsheet, one more unread message, or one more minute of crying.
The system shuts down to protect itself.
Exactly.
It really makes me wonder, though, if we are the dog in this scenario, sprinting as hard as we can until we are violently snapped back by our own necks, who or what tied the knot?
That's the big question.
Are we doing this to ourselves? Did we tie our own tether because we bought into hustle culture? Or is society holding the leash?
That is the fundamental tension of modern labor.
Yeah.
We might tell ourselves we are choosing to work those 80-hour weeks. We convince ourselves that we are running freely towards success. But the tether represents the undeniable hard limits of our biology and psychology.
We think we are running free, but we are attached to a very finite rope.
And the environment itself is designed to make us run. It demands the sprint.
Which perfectly introduces the name we give to this environment. The specific architecture that causes us to sprint toward the end of our tether in the first place. We call it the rat race.
The exhausting, competitive, and highly repetitive routine of modern working life.
It's the daily reality where everyone is aggressively fighting for wealth, fighting for power, elbowing each other out of the way, but nobody actually gets anywhere meaningful.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the metaphor of rats in a maze carries a profound amount of existential dread when you actually break it down.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. My mind instantly goes to a hamster running on a wheel.
Oh, that's a great visual.
It has the exact same frantic, desperate vibe. You have this explosion of energy. You are sweating. You are grinding through the 80-hour weeks that hustle culture demands.
Yeah.
The wheel is spinning so fast, it's just a blur.
Right.
But the scenery never, ever changes. You are in the exact same spot in the cage. You are just exhausted.
Yeah, the wheel or the maze represents the illusion of progress.
The illusion, exactly.
Yeah. In a corporate environment, people deeply believe they're climbing a ladder. The concept of the corporate ladder implies upward mobility, achieving a higher vantage point and eventually reaching a summit of wealth or power.
But the language we collectively use betrays that belief.
Completely. We say ladder in our formal corporate documents, but in our honest private moments, we call it a race of rats and a maze.
Yeah.
This reveals a deep, shared, subconscious awareness that it's actually a closed loop.
A maze isn't a ladder. A maze is a puzzle designed to confuse, disorient, and trap the creature inside it.
And critically, a maze is designed by someone else, usually for their own benefit or observation, not for the benefit of the rat.
Oh, that's dark.
Right. The rat gets a small piece of cheese for navigating a corner, which keeps it running, but the rat never owns the maze.
Think about the classic example from our source material of someone trying to escape this.
Yeah.
The person who spends 30 years in high-stakes finance, making great money, acquiring power, but ultimately hits the end of their tether, quits the rat race entirely and opens a small, quiet bakery.
That specific pivot from high finance to baking bread is deeply symbolic.
It really is because of the tangibility of the work.
Right.
If you spend 30 years in the finance maze, what are you actually doing? You are moving abstract numbers on a digital screen. You are generating theoretical wealth. It's exhausting, but it's invisible.
It is entirely disconnected from the physical reality of human survival.
But baking bread, you mix flour, water, and yeast with your own hands.
Yeah.
You feel the dough. You bake it, the room smells incredible, and you hand a physical warm loaf of bread to another human being who is going to eat it.
It's real.
It has definitive beginning, middle, and end. You aren't just turning a wheel. You are creating sustenance. Leaving the rat race for the bakery is a total rejection of the illusion of the maze.
It is seeking an environment where the work aligns with natural human rhythms rather than artificial corporate loops.
But of course, not everyone can just drop everything and open a bakery tomorrow.
No, definitely not.
Most of us are still in the maze, still feeling the water creeping up to our eyeballs. So how do we survive the day-to-day?
We need tactics.
Right, we need an escape plan, even if it's temporary.
And the approach to reclaiming sanity starts with immediate short-term solutions, these micro-tactics. The primary tools discussed are taking a breather and getting a change of scenery.
Okay, let's look at taking a breather. It's defined exactly as it sounds.
Yeah.
A short pause to rest and literally catch your breath.
Yeah.
Like you study for 4 solid hours, your brain is melting, so you physically stop, stand up, and go get a coffee. It's a micropause.
Right. And then there is the change of scenery, which is about moving to a completely different environment to refresh your mind.
This could be small scale or large scale, right?
Exactly.
The micro version is taking your laptop out of your dark, cramped home office and walking down the street to sit in a bright, sunny coffee shop. The macro version is taking your hard-earned, highly guarded vacation days and traveling out to the mountains or the beach. The goal is to shift your perspective, to remind your brain that there's a massive world out there that has absolutely nothing to do with your job.
Right. These tactics are entirely focused on sensory disruption.
I have to push back on this, though.
Okay, go ahead.
I hear change of scenery, and my immediate thought is, aren't these just psychological band-aids?
I see what you mean.
If I am drowning in work and I take my laptop from my dark home office and plop it down on a table in a sunny coffee shop, I am still staring at the exact same glowing rectangle.
True.
I am still doing the exact same stressful work. The emails are still flooding in. Does moving to a coffee shop actually do anything to fix the rat race? Or does it just make the inside of my cage look slightly nicer for an hour?
It is a vital critique, absolutely.
What?
Moving your laptop to a cafe does not dismantle hustle culture. A week at the beach does not structurally change your company's expectation of 80-hour work weeks. These are not systemic fixes. However, we cannot dismiss the profound cognitive benefits of these micro-tactics.
Why are they necessary if they don't fix the root problem?
Because of how the human brain processes chronic environments of stress.
Okay.
When you are constantly up to your eyeballs, your brain creates strong visual and spatial associations with that stress. The dark home office, the specific chair, the angle of the monitor, neurologically, these physical cues trigger a stress response before you even open an email.
Wow. Your body remembers the panic of the room.
Exactly. You become locked in a sensory loop of dread. Shifting your physical perspective by moving to a sunny coffee shop breaks that immediate visual loop.
Right.
Even if you are doing the exact same work, the ambient noise is different, the lighting is different. You see strangers walking by, living lives completely unrelated to your spreadsheets.
Yeah.
It forces the brain to process novel, non-threatening stimuli.
So it's not about solving the workload, it's about breaking the tunnel vision.
It is the cognitive equivalent of coming up for air. Breaking that visual loop, like escaping the dark home office, is often the first necessary step to remembering that a reality exists outside of the hustle.
Yeah.
You cannot plan a grand escape from the maze if your eyes are glued to the floor of it. A change of scenery lifts your head up.
It resets the nervous system just enough so you can think clearly.
Precisely.
But once you have that clarity, once you realize you don't want to spend the next 30 years on the hamster wheel, a breather isn't enough.
No, it's not.
The micro tactics help you survive Tuesday. But to survive a career, you need a macro defense. You have to construct permanent boundaries.
This is where we shift from temporary relief to the ultimate structural defense. The phrase for this is drawing a line in the sand.
Establishing a strict boundary or a limit that you absolutely unconditionally refuse to cross.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about this concept is how practical the applications are. Drawing a line in the sand isn't an abstract philosophy. It's a series of hard choices.
It manifests in very specific behaviors.
It's the active refusal to check your work emails on a Saturday morning.
Right.
It is taking your work phone the exact second the clock strikes 5 p.m. on a Friday and physically putting it inside a drawer.
Yeah.
So you cannot see the screen light up.
Yeah.
It is looking a manager in the eye and flat out refusing to work unpaid overtime because your time has value.
But these actions require overcoming a massive ingrained obstacle, which is fear.
The fear is paralyzing for a lot of people.
Because hustle culture has conditioned us to believe that setting a boundary is a hostile act.
Yes.
People are terrified to draw these lines because they assume their boss will be furious or that they will be immediately flagged as not a team player.
Which is just corporate code for someone who refuses to be exploited.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? The choice of words in this idiom is brilliant. A line in the sand.
Yeah.
Think about the physics of a beach. Sand is fluid. It shifts under your feet. You can take a heavy stick and carve a deep, distinct trench in the sand. You can point to it and say, this is my boundary. But what happens 5 minutes later?
A tide comes in.
The wind picks up, the tide rolls in, the water washes over the beach, and when it pulls back, the sand is perfectly flat again. Your line is gone.
The fluidity of the sand is the entire lesson of the metaphor.
Setting a boundary isn't a one-and-done event. You don't draw the line once and walk away.
No.
Drawing a line in the sand requires you to stand guard over it. You have to constantly look down, notice that the wind is blurring the edges, and actively carve it out again.
Yeah.
If you don't continually redraw and defend that boundary, the endless tide of work will just wash in and erase it as if it was never there.
That observation aligns perfectly with the harshest, most necessary truth about corporate environments from the text.
Which is?
If you never push back, your company will take as much of your time as you let them.
It sounds so cold when you say it like that.
It is cold because it is structural, not personal. It highlights the fundamental transactional nature of corporate time.
Right.
An organization, by its very definition, is an entity designed to consume resources to produce an output or a profit.
And your life is the resource.
Your time, your mental bandwidth, your physical energy, these are the raw materials the organization consumes. The organization does not have a built-in mechanism to tell you to stop working.
No, it doesn't.
If there is no hard boundary, the system will naturally endlessly consume the resource until the resource is depleted, until you hit the end of your tether.
So it's not even necessarily that your boss is evil, it's just the physics of the system. It will expand to fill all the space you give it.
Exactly. Therefore, drawing that line in the sand has to be an active, ongoing practice of self-preservation. You are constantly maintaining the border of your own existence against a system that wants to consume it.
And this brings us to the profound realization of why we are dissecting all of this today. We've talked about the glorification of hustle culture, the panic of being up to our eyeballs, the violent snap at the end of our tethers, the existential trap of the rat race, and the daily necessity of drawing lines in the sand.
Right.
Mastering this vocabulary does something incredible to your brain.
It moves these concepts from abstract suffering into active memory.
Think about what it feels like to struggle without having the words for it.
It's isolating.
You might spend months or even years feeling this heavy, crushing weight in your chest every Sunday night as the work week approaches. You feel like you are failing.
Yeah.
You feel crazy, you feel alone, you feel like you just aren't strong enough or smart enough to handle what everyone else seems to be handling.
You internalize the systemic failure as a personal failure.
Yes. But then someone introduces you to the phrase hustle culture, and they explain the mechanics of the rat race.
Right.
And suddenly you have this massive aha moment. You realize, oh, it's not just me. I am not broken. I am operating inside a societal system that is explicitly designed to make me feel this way.
Naming the environment validates the internal struggle.
Simply having the right words to describe your burnout can make you feel less crazy and less alone. It makes the invisible pressure visible.
This raises an important question about how language shapes our reality.
Yeah.
If we do not possess the precise vocabulary to name hustle culture, or if we lack the idioms to articulate the exact sensation of being up to our eyeballs, we remain blind to the mechanics of our own exhaustion.
You can't fight it.
Exactly. You cannot fight an enemy that you cannot identify.
And you definitely cannot communicate your boundaries to others. Imagine trying to tell a manager you need a break without these concepts.
Right.
You just sound vaguely tired. But when you understand the mechanics, you can articulate exactly why the line in the sand must be drawn at 5 p.m. Language becomes the weapon you use to defend your time.
It provides the necessary cognitive scaffolding to build those boundaries. By mastering these phrases, you are arming yourself against the tide.
Which is exactly why we went on this deep dive today. It is truly amazing how exploring a handful of idioms can unlock such profound insights into work-life balance, mental health, and the way society functions.
And it really is.
If you take anything away from this today, let it be the practical advice from the source. Take a breather this week.
Yes, please do.
Defend your boundaries. When Friday hits, put that phone in a drawer and do not look at it.
Reclaim the space outside the maze.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. A new angle to look at all of this based on today's text.
Okay.
We just spent this entire time exploring a massive, vivid, highly detailed vocabulary. We have dozens of ways to describe the nuance of exhaustion.
Yeah, we do.
We have drowning metaphors, dog choking metaphors, rat maze metaphors, hamster wheel analogies.
The linguistic catalog for Burnout is incredibly rich, dark, and varied.
It is. But think about the flip side of that equation. Why do we seem to have so few vivid, culturally universal words to describe pure, guilt-free rest?
Wow, that is a staggering realization.
If you actually managed to step entirely outside the rat race, did you quit the finance job, open the bakery, or just decided to sit by a river and do absolutely nothing for a week?
Yeah.
How would you even begin to describe your new life?
Yeah. How are you?
How do you describe the joy of stillness using a language that is fundamentally obsessed with and built around productivity?
We have 50 words for overworking and almost none for simply existing.
Think about that linguistic void the next time you try to explain to someone why you were doing absolutely nothing on a Sunday afternoon. Until next time, keep questioning the words you use, keep drawing those lines in the sand, and whatever you do, don't let the tide wash them away.